Hello, this is a classical game that I played today. I'm playing black, okay? My opponent starts with e4. I play c5, the Sicilian. We love the Sicilian, okay? Fantastic opening. Knight f3, knight c6, all very normal stuff. And my opponent plays bishop c4. This is the old Sicilian. So I usually play e6. I'm planning to play d5 on the next move, and I'm blunting his bishop's diagonal, right? Very, very nice. So it's quite normal to play something like knight c3, or, knight c3 to stop d5, and then like knight f6 is theory, I think, but I like playing knight g7 sometimes in blitz games. Okay. Yeah, there's a ton of theory here. Like there's also a setup where you can castle, d5, take, rook e1 check, bishop e7, and bishop goes back to f1. Um, so there's like a lot of theoretical stuff here, but my opponent plays quite the surprising move, which is a3. So as you can see, the evaluation bar does not like it very much. Um, and it actually says that my best move is knight f6. Now, this is going to be a theme for pretty much this entire game, but both me and my opponent needed to be more wary of making automatic moves. So automatic moves in chess um, is often just like a move like, oh, of course you played this here. That's simple. And then you don't calculate, you just play on instinct and you end up missing something. So you need to be very wary of making automatic moves if you want to be good at chess. That is not something that me and my opponent did this game. I played d5 here automatically. Knight f6 is better, but okay, you do have to see that the reason why it's better is because it forces white to play d3, and now you can play d5, and there's no longer bishop e2. So this is why like the computer says that this is so much better, because if you play, let's say knight c3 for example, also queen e2, then there's just knight takes e4 and d5. Okay, there's still more to be said in this position, but it should just be good for black. Also, e5 doesn't work due to knight here, and basically white just can't hold on to the pawn, right? If you look at this, what was the line? Oh yeah, it was takes, bishop f4, f6, pinning e pawn to the bishop on f4, and basically you're just going to lose this pawn here, right? And apparently taking it with the knight is best. So all of those things are unplayable. You have to see that and realize that d3 is something that you want white to play. I didn't go for this. I played d5 immediately, which was kind of my entire plan for playing e6. Now he plays e takes d5, obviously. He takes d5. And if he plays bishop e2, I only have a slight advantage. But I'm very lucky that my opponent is human. And the whole purpose behind him playing a3 was to free up the a2 square for his bishop. So he plays bishop a2. Now, again with the automatic moves, I'm still not thinking here, and neither is my opponent, okay? Funny story, my opponent actually arrived 15 minutes late to the game because his bus was late for some reason. Yeah, I don't know, very unlucky, but we're both not thinking so far, and I just play bishop g4. It's quite the simple move because obviously I want to prevent him from playing d4 because I will get an isolated pawn here, or I will be forced to play c4 and get this weakened backwards pawn on d5. Obviously there's some other things to look at, like okay, I can play b6 and blah blah blah, but basically b6 is bad and that will be forced in one of these setups. So I don't want to do that. That's why I play bishop g4. And my opponent plays c3 here. We both play these moves pretty quickly, but it is overlooking a very important move that you can probably see the computer is suggesting, which is queen e7 check. So before I played bishop g4, I should have played queen e7 check immediately because it essentially forces his king into the center, and this is just good for black. And after I played bishop g4, he should have castled to avoid this, right? So yeah, we both missed these things, and now queen e7 is slightly stronger than it was before because he's played c3. And now look at these pieces over here on the queen side. Actually, you can even include these two. All so passive. The only piece that's doing anything is this bishop, and it's targeting d5, but d5 is almost always defended. So it's really, really passive for white. So he plays queen e2. King f1 is bad, just visually. Like, I don't think you need to look into too many tactics here to see that, okay, your rook is pretty stuck, and your king is pretty weak, and it's just bad. So queen e2, at least he's trading the queens off the board. So even if his king is in the center, he won't get checkmated. Supposedly. So the computer actually says that after something like long castles here, then you can play queen takes e7, and I can play like knight takes e7, and supposedly I'm like much better here. But from the human perspective, the whole reason why I played queen e7 check was to force his king to stay in the center and to give him issues with this, right? So I think taking the queen is pretty human, even though it's not the best move. So I play long castles. Pretty good move because I'm defending my pawn on d5 that was undefended half a second ago. And I am getting my king to safety and bringing my rook into the game, right? Very, very normal, logical stuff. So he plays rook e1 here, which is another very logical developing move. For some reason, the computer likes rook d1 better. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into all that. Yeah, so he plays rook e1, and here I thought for a bit. Was it here? Yes, it was here. And I was looking at a line where it was knight e5, and then d4, then I take his knight, he takes back, I play rook here check, and I was thinking that his king would move somewhere, I would take his rook, and win his pawn on f3. Right, so let's say king moves somewhere, and I take his rook, take his pawn on f3, but I thought that this position, okay, first of all, after like knight d2, I have to stay on this diagonal to defend my d5 pawn. Maybe I don't have enough here, right? I only won one pawn, and I just basically fixed all of his developing problems, right? Maybe he can move his knight and bring his bishop into the game, bring his rook into the game. You know, I just kind of solved his problems a little bit, it feels like, and winning one pawn isn't always as winning as it seems to be. Like, if we get into a rook endgame, right? This is probably easily drawn somehow. Okay, well, maybe not, but if we get into like a specific rook endgame with very few pawns on the board, it would be a draw. So I didn't go for this, but I only saw on the next move I play, which is knight f6, that he didn't even need to move his king here. He could just block, and I'm not winning a pawn, and I've just solved all his issues with developing, right? Knight here is coming next. He can bring a rook over to the d-file, and, you know, this would be a catastrophe in comparison to the position that I had a few moments ago. So I end up playing knight f6, simply bringing another piece into the game because I don't see anything so concrete. He plays d3, a pretty logical move because he can't play d4 and he wants to open up a square for his knight and bring his bishop into the game and all of this stuff, right? So I played bishop d6, which is, as you can see, the computer's favorite move, and it's also just an incredibly normal developing move. Hitting some pawns over here and stuff like that. So he plays knight d2. Note that it's only knight d2, it's not knight b d2, because this knight cannot go to d2. That's something that I always forget in my notation. So this looks like a completely fine position for white, but as you can see, the computer kind of spoils it I can play bishop takes h2, which I did play in the game. And I was actually at first thinking that after bishop takes h2, he can just play g3. So I thought that I would play maybe knight h5 here, but I thought after g3, I don't really have anything so concrete, right? Knight h5, you're threatening to go in here, hit the weak d3 pawn, hit the g2 pawn, all of this stuff. So just g3, and there's not that much here for black that I saw. So I'm very glad that I found the critical move. Bishop takes h2, and he thinks there's nothing wrong. So this is, again, maybe just a little bit of an automatic move. I don't know because I haven't talked to him about this topic specifically. I did speak to him after the game and analyze and stuff like that. However, I think that after I thought for a while and then played bishop takes h2, which seemingly gives away a bishop after g3, maybe he should have, been aware that there could be something wrong, right? I think for a very, very long time, and then I just give away a bishop. I think, you definitely have to be very, very confident before you make the move g3, but he played it, which, as you can see, loses to one move very specifically, or two moves technically, and I played it rook h e8 check. I obviously brought this rook over because this rook is more active. The computer says that it doesn't matter because after king d1, for example, it thinks that you should take the rook down here, and then after king takes, you can play rook e1 check here. And that's why it says, okay, it doesn't matter what rook you bring because no matter what, this is the variation you're going to end up in. But for me, if he had played king d1, that kind of spoils it a bit. I would have played knight e5, which either wins a piece after king c2, just simply wins a piece, for example, or he can sack the exchange, and it looks like he maybe has something here after king c2. Right now he's threatening my rook, he's threatening my bishop, and I can just take, and play rook e2 check. And this is pretty easily winning for black, because black is up 2 pawns and an exchange, obviously with way more activity, blah, blah, blah. However, in the game, he did not play king d1. He played a shocking move, which is, again, be wary of automatic moves. He played king f1. So obviously the computer spoils, but quite simply, bishop h3 mate. Yeah, pretty shocking way to end the game, but I win with the black pieces in 14 moves by checkmate. And it wasn't, I don't think that this was necessarily a trick, because even if he had found the best defensive resource, he would still go like down a piece or an exchange into pawns, and it would still be completely lost. So, he could also just have resigned right here, just like, I give up, because there's truly no way to defend after 95. You have to give away material of some kind. You can play something like rook e3, but just d4, take, your rook has to move again. Yeah, so a pretty clean game on my part. I could maybe have thought a little bit more about some things, like, for example, the whole queen e7 check part of the game, and also in the opening after a3, right? I don't know if I would have played knight f6 if I had seen it, because it does take like a great deal of understanding here with the white pieces with the black pieces to understand that white actually wants to play bishop e2 and not play bishop a2, which was the whole point of a3, obviously. But yeah, that's about it for this video. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and tell me if you've ever had a classical game with as fast of a mate as this one, right? It has to be checkmate on the board, not your opponent resigning. And yeah, I would love to hear if anybody has like a checkmate in 10 moves, or if someone got the scholar's mate or something. Yep. But I'll see you in the next one. Bye.